Good morning, and welcome to the PFAS informational webinar. I'm Nick Lawler, General Manager of Littleton Electric Light and Water Departments. Thank you for joining us this morning. We've organized this forum to update the community on our work regarding the per and polyfluoroalkyl substances found in our Spectacle Pond well. Per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS for short, were used in many non-stick products between the 1950s and 1990s. PFAS were used to coat non-stick frying pans, stain-resistant carpets, and wrinkle-free shirts. They're also used in firefighting foams. PFAS are resistant to breaking down in the environment. Once the soil and water, they're there for a long time. PFAS is of concern in the water because studies show if consumed in large quantities, it may lead to a variety of health effects. The Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection is expected to set a limit on the allowable amount of PFAS in drinking water of 20 parts per trillion. At LELWD, we have both short-term and long-term solutions to ensure water delivered to our consumers meets all state standards. I'm joined today by Corey Godfrey, our environmental analyst, who will brief you further on the issue and our plans to address it. If you have questions, we ask that you either use the question and answer feature on Zoom or email us at info@lelwd.com. Corey and I will answer questions after his presentation. We will also provide written answers to questions and post them on the webpage we have dedicated to this issue, lelwd.com/PFAS. PFAS. On this page, you will find more information about PFAS and links to resources from the Mass DEP and the US CDC. Before I turn it over to Corey, I'd like to first take a few moments to provide the background information and context for everyone to understand who the Water Department is, what we do, and how PFAS fits into all of this. Approximately 85% of the town of Littleton's population is served by public water supply, which is overseen by an elected Board of Water Commissioners. The Board of Water Commissioners answers directly to the Littleton voters and the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. The Board of Water Commissioners oversees the general manager, who in turn oversees a staff of 12 professionals who comprise the Littleton Water Department. While the blue trucks you see driving down the street on a daily basis may be our most prominent public face, there are another 7 employees in our treatment plants and offices providing highly technical engineering services that are just as critical as the work conducted by our operators in the blue trucks. Now I'd like to turn it over to Corey Godfrey, who has worked for LELWD for 6 years as our environmental analyst. Corey's responsibilities include water resource planning to ensure we have a safe and sustainable water supply, water quality monitoring and assessment, and overseeing the design and engineering of water treatment projects for the water system. Corey holds a master's degree in resource management and conservation, has 15 years experience in the water quality field, and is a licensed drinking water operator. Corey?
Thanks, Nick. Again, following this presentation, we will answer as many questions as we have time for. And you can either use the question and answer feature on Zoom, or you can email your questions to info@lelwd.com. So as I'm showing on the map here on your screen, the Water Department operates 3 public water supply wells that pump over 1 million gallons per day, 2 treatment plants to filter this water, 3 storage tanks that can hold 4 million gallons of water at any given time, and 80 miles of water main that deliver safe drinking water to 3,300 homes and businesses in Littleton. Now, I just said something very important, safe drinking water. What does that mean? Next slide, Dave. The Safe Drinking Water Act was enacted by the US Congress in 1974 to ensure that all public water supplies in America provide safe drinking water. The US EPA was charged with implementing the many provisions of the Safe Drinking Water Act, and they in turn delegate primacy to state agencies, in our case, the Mass DEP. So the Mass DEP then carries out the day-to-day enforcement of the Safe Drinking Water Act, including the establishment and enforcement of maximum contaminant levels, or MCLs, for substances that either Mass DEP or US EPA have determined to represent a threat to public health. And local water departments, such as LWD, are then charged with protecting and, if necessary, treating the public water supply to ensure compliance with the MCLs that have been established. Next slide, please. So the way we do that is through extensive water quality sampling in the zones of contribution to our water supply wells. So we actually collect 3,000 samples for 120 different contaminants at our 3 water supply wells every year to ensure that the water we are providing to our customers meets all MCLs. We also collect 2,700 samples for 80 different contaminants at 57 groundwater monitoring wells located at potential contamination sources in town, such as industrial and commercial properties. And we also collect 65 samples for 13 parameters at 13 stream and lake sampling locations to obtain an overall picture of surface water quality in town. And this map just kind of shows the locations of all of those sample sites. Next slide, please. So we're required to report all of our water quality data to Mass DEP and to notify them immediately anytime we find a contaminant above the MCL. So if a contaminant is above the MCL at one of our water supply wells, then Mass DEP's drinking water program will require installation of a treatment system capable of removing that contaminant. If a contaminant is above the GW1 standard at a monitoring well in a drinking water supply protection area, then Mass DEP's waste site cleanup program will require the property owner to clean up the pollution at their property and to hire a licensed site professional to determine the extent to which that contamination has migrated off-site. So that property owner then becomes legally and financially responsible for any impacts from that pollution. Now, currently, there is no MCL for PFAS, but as of last December, there is a GW1 standard for PFAS, and there will be an MCL for PFAS very shortly. Next slide, please. So before we go too far on PFAS, I'm just going to give you the 30-second chemistry lesson on what PFAS are. So as Nick mentioned, PFAS stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. They were invented in the 1940s, and they have some very useful properties due to their carbon-fluorine bond, which is the strongest chemical bond in nature. They're both hydrophobic and hydrophilic, meaning that they repel both water and grease, which is a very, very unique property and what makes them so useful in so many different products. When we say PFAS, we're actually talking about a family of over 7,000 related compounds. The 2 most common are known as PFOA and PFAS. Now, these were compounds that were used to manufacture some very useful consumer products like Teflon, Scotchgard, firefighting foam, and a whole host of other products that we all use in our daily lives. Now, PFAS and PFOA were phased out of production in the US in 2002, but they were replaced with other PFAS compounds that have very similar properties and that can transform into PFAS or PFOA once they get into the environment. Next slide, please. So PFAS contamination most often comes from usage or storage of aqueous film-forming foam, or AFFF. This is the foam used to fight fires involving petroleum products. So it's often found near military bases, airports, oil refineries, fire stations or training areas, and isolated locations of actual fires where the AFFF firefighting foam was used to extinguish a fire. PFAS can also be transported by air from industrial smokestacks, and it's often found at landfills and in wastewater effluent. Next slide, please. All right, so this map here, it's only a month old, so it's pretty recent, and it shows the extent of known PFAS contamination in the United States and the impact on public water supplies. So as you can see, there are many hundreds of drinking water supplies contaminated with PFAS across the country, but especially in the Northeast. This is partly due to a higher rate of testing in the Northeast as compared to much of the rest of the country. but this is changing rapidly as testing increases everywhere. Next slide, please. So the US EPA initially offered a health advisory level of concern for the two most prevalent PFAS compounds, PFOS and PFOA, in 2009. Then in 2016, they lowered those acceptable levels in the health advisories. But it should be noted that a health advisory is not a regulatory limit. It's just an opinion from EPA on what they consider may be toxic levels of a contaminant. So these numbers have no teeth and they don't require any action from anyone. However, with the release of a Netflix documentary called The Devil We Know in 2018 and the subsequent Hollywood film Dark Waters, which was released earlier this year, there's been a public push for more stringent limits on PFAS in drinking water. Next slide. So because of EPA's inaction on the issue, state regulatory bodies are taking things into their own hands, and they've begun regulating PFAS with a variety of different approaches in different states. In January 2019, Mass DEP announced its intention to develop a maximum contaminant level of 20 parts per trillion for the sum of 6 PFAS compounds. Now that regulatory process to set the MCL takes a while, and the draft regulations were out for public comment until the end of February 2020, so 3 months ago. And now DEP is finalizing those regulations before the MCL becomes official. It was expected to be finalized by now, but DEP has stated that they don't intend to promulgate the new MCL until the COVID-19 crisis has subsided. So it might be later this year. Next slide, please. So these are the 6 PFAS compounds that Mass DEP has chosen to regulate. You'll notice that both PFOS and PFOA are on the list, but there are 4 others listed as well. These have been demonstrated to behave very similarly to PFOS and PFOA in the body and the environment, which is why Mass DEP has chosen to regulate them. Next slide. This is a map of the 21 Massachusetts communities that have found PFAS levels for the sum of the 6 compounds I listed on the previous slide above 20 parts per trillion. Now this is just so far. There'll be many, many more to come since most public water supplies in Massachusetts, just like across the country, have not even ever tested for PFAS yet. Next slide, please. So this is a list of those same 21 Massachusetts communities that have found PFAS over 20 parts per trillion, and a very simplified summary of their response actions. You'll notice Littleton Water Department is 5th on that list. Next slide, please. Okay, so in order to be proactive, we decided to voluntarily sample our Spectacle Pond well for the 6 PFAS compounds proposed to be regulated, and we found levels of 28 parts per trillion for the sum of the 6. So 28 compared to the 20 as the proposed limit. We notified Mass DEP, the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Health immediately, and we've been sampling monthly ever since. That was about a year ago now. Mass DEP came out to meet with us here to discuss the issue, and together we came up with a plan to address the contamination. So the first thing we did was send a letter out to every one of our customers, followed by another letter that went to every Littleton resident, whether they're one of our customers or not, just to make sure that any private well owners were made aware as well. Since contamination in our public water supply well means contamination of the aquifer, so it's a larger area involved where there may be private wells. I encourage you to take a look at our PFAS webpage at lelwd.com/PFAS to see much more detail on the issue, including 6 LCTV episodes that Nick and I have recorded with Kirby Dolak to explain the issue in more detail. So we've also removed the Spectacle Pond well from service at the end of September last year, and we hired an engineering firm to quickly evaluate our options for both short-term and long-term solutions to the problem, since the Spectacle Pond well represents 42% of our water system's capacity. We also offered bottled water to the DEP-defined sensitive subgroup of pregnant women, nursing mothers, and infants, just in case we had to turn the spectacle pond well back online before treatment was in place. We worked as quickly as possible to put a short-term temporary solution in place so that we can continue to serve our customers while we build the permanent treatment plant, which will take about 2.5 years to complete. And this short-term solution is a blending pipeline that just went into service this past week, and which I'll describe in a little more detail on the next slide. Then I'll also describe the permanent treatment plant in more detail a couple of slides from now. And then I'll also describe an investigation of the source of PFAS contamination in our spectacle pond well. We've done a lot of sampling, and DEP has done a lot of sampling, and we've been coordinating and sharing information. And like I said, I'll describe that in a few more slides here. So the short-term solution is to temporarily send water from our Beaver Brook wells, which have low levels of PFAS, to the spectacle pond wells, which have the higher levels of PFAS, and blend the two sources to bring the PFAS levels below 20 parts per trillion. Now, that's not a permanent solution, but it's the quickest one to implement and the most cost-effective. So pipeline installation started this past March, and we actually brought it online last week. The total project cost for this was about $600,000, which is actually a very good price for 2 miles of water main and far less expensive than installing temporary filters at the spectacle pond treatment plant. Another action we took was we instituted a complete outdoor water ban last October, actually, in order to minimize usage of the spectacle pond well as much as possible. And like I said, we didn't have to run it once since then, which was great. But now with the blending pipeline in place, we plan to reduce those restrictions starting next week. There'll still be water use restrictions, but they won't be as stringent. They'll allow people to maintain their lawns within reason. And the reason for this is, the reason why we still are going to have some restrictions is that the blending pipeline allows us to recover much of spectacle pond's capacity, but it doesn't put us back at 100%. So we do still need to be careful and mindful about using too much water outdoors. Next slide, please. Okay, so while we're now safely below the 20 part per trillion level, we are redesigning the Whitcomb Ave water treatment plant to treat water from 2 of our 3 well sites instead of just 1, in order to also remove PFAS from those wells completely. So a permanent transmission main will be built to carry 1 million gallons of water per day from the spectacle pond well to the Whitcomb Ave treatment plant. And this treatment plant will remove iron, manganese, arsenic, and PFAS. And we expect the design to be complete and ready to go out to bid this fall. Next slide, please. So right now we're wrapping up the pilot study for the treatment plant. And a pilot study is a standard step in the process of designing a treatment plant. It basically tests out different technologies on the water that you intend to treat to see which technology works best. So for the iron, manganese, and arsenic removal, we're evaluating Green Sand Plus and biological treatment. They each have their advantages and disadvantages, but at the end of the day, they remove iron, manganese, and arsenic to non-detectable levels. And for PFAS removal, we are evaluating granular activated carbon, or GAC, and anion exchange resins. We also looked at reverse osmosis very briefly, but determined that it would be impractical for multiple reasons. Next slide, please. So this is a general project timeline going forward. We're currently continuing the design of the treatment plant, and we'll be obtaining all the necessary permits and approvals over the summer. At the fall town meeting, we'll be requesting the remaining funding necessary to complete this project. Over the winter, the design will be finalized, bid, and awarded, with construction beginning as soon as feasible after that. And we expect construction to be complete in June of 2022, with the facility being online by July of 2022. Next slide, please. So here I've laid out the costs in broad terms. $13 million has already been authorized for the project. And as we told you all at the fall 2019 special town meeting, we will be back for more in order to complete the project. We anticipate requesting an additional $7.5 million in fall 2020 to complete the project. And I'll note that we have applied for a 0% interest loan through the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust for the temporary PFAS blending pipeline. And we're currently applying for a $200,000 grant from Mass DEP to offset the design costs. And we expect to finance the rest of the costs through a loan from the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust that will have an interest rate no higher than 1.5% and potentially as low as 0%. So these are obviously very attractive loan terms, only available to high priority water quality improvement projects in Massachusetts. Next slide, please. Okay, so in addition to building the temporary blending pipeline and designing the permanent water treatment plant to remove PFAS from the water supply, we've also been conducting an investigation to identify the source of PFAS to the Spectacle Pond well. And it turns out that there's not just one or even two, but at least 3 distinct sources of PFAS in the watershed that may be causing the contamination of our Spectacle Pond well. So this map shows all the locations that we have sampled for PFAS so far. The red are groundwater monitoring wells, and the dark blue are sample sites on streams that flow into Spectacle Pond. And then the larger solid light blue dots are private and public water supplies that have been sampled. So I'm not going to get into the details of the 3 sources of PFAS right now, since the investigation is ongoing, but I'll just say that the goal is to find the source of the contamination and to hold that entity responsible for it, thereby limiting the Littleton Water Department customers' financial liability for treating the contaminated water. All right, next slide. Okay, so it's question and answer period now. I think, Dave, you're gonna take a look at the list of questions that we have, and Nick and I will plan to answer them.
Thank you, Nick and Corey, for that great presentation. We have received a slew of questions, and I'd just like to remind everyone that's on the Zoom meeting to use the Q&A feature here to answer or ask any questions that you'd like answered or any follow-up questions. And for everyone watching on LCTV, just submit questions to info@lelwd.com, and we'll answer as many questions as possible. Corey, I think this first one, the first couple actually might be for you. So how can consuming PFAS affect my health?
Yeah, it's a good question. So research is ongoing. It's clear that very high levels of PFAS may have negative health effects. What's less clear is the level at which different health effects are observed. But Mass DEP developed their 20 part per trillion number based on developmental effects in fetuses during pregnancy and in breastfed infants. Effects on the thyroid, liver, kidneys, hormone levels, and the immune system have also been reported. And some studies suggest a cancer risk may exist in people exposed to levels that are hundreds of parts per trillion or higher. I'm obviously not a medical expert, so I don't want to say too much more than that, but I would recommend you go to our website at lelwd.com/PFAS and click on the links on the left of that landing page that will bring you to websites from the Centers for Disease Control, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and Mass DEP. And some of those pages address that topic in more detail.
Great. Okay. So what is LWD doing to assist private well owners in the Spectacle Pond watershed, and what can I personally do to protect my health and recover any associated costs?
Sure. So LWD has been offering a $100 rebate towards the $350 laboratory cost for a PFAS sample for those homeowners with a private well in the Spectacle Pond watershed. So as part of that program, we will actually go out and collect the sample. We'll help interpret the laboratory results for the homeowner. But unfortunately, we can't do too much more than that since private wells are not really under our purview. They're regulated by the Board of Health.
Okay, thank you. We've got a few more here too. Is there an in-home solution that I can install to filter PFAS?
Unfortunately, there haven't been any home water filters certified to remove PFAS below 20 parts per trillion. That doesn't mean that there aren't any out there. However, the testing just hasn't been done to confirm whether or not they remove PFAS to those very low levels. But the filter technologies that are known to remove or at least reduce PFAS are the ones that I've mentioned in this presentation: granular activated carbon, anion exchange, and reverse osmosis. And those are all available at the home water treatment scale. LELWD is actually working with the University of Massachusetts in Lowell to evaluate several home water filters and their ability to remove PFAS in Littleton's water specifically. But the COVID-19 situation has slowed that project way down, unfortunately. We should still have results later this year, I think. But just as a reminder, if you're on town water in Littleton, PFAS levels are below 20 parts per trillion now and have been since last September. And that's the level that DEP has identified as being a health concern.
Okay, and then actually two more stemming off of that question. How can we make sure the drinking water is safe for our kids at schools, and should additional filtration be added to the schools?
Yeah, it's a good question. So like I just said, the levels in the town water supply are now below 20 parts per trillion. So that's considered safe by all of the relevant regulatory agencies. So there shouldn't be any need for additional filtration at the schools. And in broader terms, water quality at the schools, we work pretty closely with the school department, especially on lead and copper sampling, to make sure that all of the fixtures, the plumbing fixtures in the school are meeting the lead and copper requirements there. So if any other issues come up that we need to address in terms of water quality at the schools, that should be pretty easy to do with the school department.
Okay, thanks, Corey. And then this one, I think you might have answered a little bit before, but where can we learn more about PFAS?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of information on the internet in general. I would suggest that you start at our webpage, lelwd.com/PFAS. So you can obviously read more there about, things specific to Littleton with PFAS, but then you can follow the links on the left of that page to the CDC, EPA, and DEP pages on the topic. So those are the official pages from all the relevant government agencies. So I would start there to make sure you're getting trustworthy information before branching out.
Okay, great. And I know that you answered this during your presentation, but I think we had some people join in late. So someone asked, why has there been a water ban in effect, and where can I find more information about that?
Yeah, so we've had a complete water ban in effect since last October because we didn't have the use of our Spectacle Pond well, which is 42% of the town's water supply. But now that we have the blending pipeline operational, we'll be able to relax those restrictions a bit. So under the reduced restrictions, outdoor watering will be permitted using the approach that we've used in the past here in town. So watering outside of the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And with the days that you can do that depend on the number of your street address. So Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, odd number residences can water between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. And Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays, even number of residences can water between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. And there's no outdoor watering permitted on Mondays, which just allows us to sort of recuperate from the increased water usage over the weekends.
Okay, and we actually had a follow-up to that one. So how will water use be monitored during the ban, and how will enforcement be handled?
Yeah, so the LWD staff will regularly patrol various neighborhoods in town. And then, typically the first violation, there's verbal warning, followed second time by a written warning. And then usually that takes care of things, but if need be, there's provisions to allow for $50 fine after that, followed by a $200 fine, followed by a $400 fine. In the most extreme case, I've not seen that in my time here, but.
Okay, great. And then this was one that we've been getting over the past week that I thought we should address. So why have I been experiencing discolored water the past few days?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've received several calls in the office here about that. So the temporary blending pipeline went into service this past Monday. So we're pumping water out of our Spectacle Pond treatment plant again for the first time in 8 months. So that means the direction of water flow has reversed for much of the water distribution system. And whenever that happens, you can expect iron and manganese that is settled in the water mains to get stirred up and cause discolored water again. And I should mention that this might continue through next week, but should subside after that.
Okay, great. Nick, I think we've got one for you. Will rates be raising in the near future because of the unforeseen PFAS contamination?
Yeah, this is a question that's popped up several times at town meetings throughout the really beginning of these projects. One thing that, a couple things that our board of commissioners truly value. One is delivering safe and reliable water to our consumers, and the other is doing so in an affordable manner. So they've really pushed us to try to do this in the least impactful way possible to the rates, which led to that temporary pipeline. Them holding us accountable to the ratepayers to make sure we evaluate all options when we commence with these projects. And another way they're doing that is to try to spread this burden out over the next 4 years. So, obviously Corey had a slide up there earlier that shows, these projects are going to cost in excess of $20 million. So that does have a rate impact. And unfortunately, to provide clean water, the rates have to go up with it. Currently, right now, we're at $47 a month for the average user, which is 60,000 gallons per year. And over the next 4 years, we're going to see increases into FY21 of $2 per month, FY22, $5 a month, FY23, $4, and then FY24, $9, which would bring, 4 years out, our monthly cost of water to $67 per month. And those are assuming that we can't take advantage of some of the stuff that Corey talked about, receiving grants, getting low interest loans. That's kind of a worst case scenario of how those projects will impact our rates.
Okay, thanks, Nick. We had a follow-up come in about the water restrictions. Are recreational sprinklers for children allowed under the water ban in effect next week?
That's a good question. I haven't gotten that one before. I think if we're not talking about irrigating lawns, then it's allowed. The main focus here is on major water usage, like irrigating your entire lawn, that sort of thing. So I guess making a decision on the fly here, I would say that's allowed, yes.
Okay, thanks, Corey. And those are all the questions we've received so far. So I just want to remind everyone on the Zoom call, if you do have follow-up questions, please use the Q&A feature. And if you're listening just on LCTV, please send an email into info@lelwd.com. I see one person has their hand or had their hand raised. So if you do have a question, just please type it out and we'll get to it. So we'll hang tight for a few moments. We just had one more come in regarding the restrictions. Will power washing be allowed going forward?
So I think the typical response to that question is that power washing of, I assume they're talking about homes, that's allowed when it's necessary to complete some type of home improvement project, like if you're going to repaint your house or something like that. So in those circumstances, it's been allowed.
Okay, great. So we'll just sit tight for another few minutes here to see if any more questions come in. We do appreciate everyone joining today. This is a very important topic, and we will, be continuing our efforts throughout the next few town meetings as well. Somebody asked us to repeat the ban information as a summary. So Corey, I don't know if you want to walk through that one more time. Maybe
Sure.
restrictions now and the restrictions we're going to.
Right. Yeah. So right now we're at the end of our complete outdoor watering ban, where there shouldn't be any outdoor water usage whatsoever. But that will be changing next week. So then we'll be back to our sort of standard protocol that we've used in years past. And that means no outdoor watering at all on Mondays, but then Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, odd number of residences can water between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. And then Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, even number of residences can water between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. So nobody should be watering from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. during the daytime, because that's mostly wasted water anyways. It gets evaporated very quickly and doesn't make it into the ground. But overnight, you can water every other day, depending on whether you're odd number of residents or even number of residents. And you can go to our website where that's spelled out as well, if you need to look at that later.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on that, Corey. So this presentation will be posted on the LCTV on demand page. There'll be a link on our website. We'll probably post it on our Facebook as well. And then we'll also write out the questions and answers and post those on our webpage as well. So if you're not taking good notes, don't feel bad. They'll be there early next week. So I think that's all of the questions we've gotten so far. I don't know, Nick or Corey, do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Nothing here.
Yeah, and I don't have anything to add, Dave. I just, like you mentioned, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, asking questions throughout the process. Again, to reiterate, we're going to post answers to all the questions that we got today. If any questions come in throughout these projects, we'll post those as well to our website. I'll say that again for everybody. It's lelwd.com/PFAS, PFAS. And I guess before we sign off, I wanted to thank a few people. The Littleton Board of Selectmen, Littleton Board of Health, were both instrumental in helping inform the public of this webinar and have supported us from the very beginning of finding this problem. Also, a special thank you to Littleton Community Television for broadcasting this webinar and helping to advertise it, and also all the work that they've done since we found this contaminant in the water supply. And finally, my thanks to the staff of Littleton Light and Water Departments for their work and organizing the webinar and efforts towards removing PFAS from our water supply. Thank you all for tuning in today and asking questions. We're committed to keeping you informed as this project progresses and work to ensure we provide safe and sustainable water to all of our consumers. Remember, you can always find more information on lelwd.com and by following us on Facebook. For all of us at LELWD, thank you and goodbye.